They shoved my hand off the table like they were swatting a fly. Then one of them laughed and tipped a bowl of hot chowder over my head. I stood there dripping, and everyone recorded it on their phones as if that was the polite thing to do. I'm Mara Ellis, and if you're wondering why a bowl of soup would ruin a man's life, stick with me. Act 1. The Night and the Quiet Buildup. I grew up in a cramped apartment above a bakery where the smell of cinnamon and the sound of the delivery trucks were as reliable as the sunrise. My mother, Rosa, cleaned offices 5 days a week and taught me how to iron a shirt so a man could look respectable at a job he didn't deserve. She taught me 2 things that stuck: do your work without excuses and keep your back straight when people look down at you. Those lessons put me through night classes, built a small investment fund, and eventually, quite slowly, built a company that people started to take seriously. Across town there was a man named Harold Kenton, the kind of name that already smells of mahogany and private clubs. He owned Kenton Real Estate, he cut ribbons with cameras, he gave speeches about urban revitalization, while neighborhoods he touched shrank in ways that never made headlines. He had a face for the philanthropy pages and a record of settlements and muffled departures. When his empire started wobbling, bad loans, over-leveraged projects, he needed a lifeline. That's where I come in, or at least where he thought he did. I signed an NDA official as a pinky promise and kept my identity quiet. CEK Investors, a holding company, a subsidiary, a name on a spreadsheet. That's how he courted a mysterious backer, not knowing the backer was the daughter of the woman who had scrubbed his executive bathrooms for 2 decades. You learn to play with shadows when you grew up invisible. Invisibility is a tool if you know how to use it. Act 2. The Public Humiliation and the Pivot. The gala was a velvet room, crystal chandeliers, people whose cufflinks cost more than my old car. I walked in carrying 2 things: a confirmation email that said I belonged there, and the memory of my mother coughing over bills on the kitchen table. I wanted to be invisible that night to survey to see how he moved his orchestra. I never expected to be assaulted. When Harold Kenton saw me at the buffet, he moved like an entitlement wave. "Get your filthy hands off my table," he said, loud and casual, like he was naming the weather. Only he shoved my hand so my plate nearly slid. He laughed, his friends laughed, and the room held its breath. I apologized because it's how you buy seconds, but he wanted a performance. He picked up a bowl of hot clam chowder and poured it over my head. Hot cream searing my face, clam bits in my hair. Then he smiled and said, "Now, you look like you belong in the kitchen where you came from." Phones came up, cameras clicked. No one stepped in. The kind of silence that is loudest is the silence of people who'd rather watch power perform than stop it. I could have screamed, I could have fainted, but instead I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and said, "Thank you for showing me who you are." Calm, precise, like a scalpel. The cameras liked that line. The internet loved it. I didn't need to fix the room. I needed to fix the man who thought he could make humiliation a private joke. He went home that night thinking he'd get a shrug and an apology tucked into tomorrow's paper. He had no idea the bowl of chowder was an ignition switch. Overnight, the video went viral. A clip here, a clip there. The algorithm did what it does best, lifting one sharp moment into public judgment. Investors called, board members texted, and by morning the man who slept in a penthouse woke to a world rearranged. He laughed when his PR team told him people were posting the video. "I'm untouchable," he said. But cameras are a new kind of witness, and witnesses are dangerous when they multiply. Act 3. The Reckoning and the Aftermath. By noon, the merger he'd been counting on fell apart. His suitors, the people he thought could paper over his behavior, backed out. The CEOs he'd dined with started penciling conflict into their calendars, and his stock cratered. He thought an apology and a donation would stitch things back together. He didn't understand that the stitches were pulled out by years of patterns, by emails that leaked, and by testimony from people who had been quiet for too long. 3 days later, I walked into his boardroom. Suit, pressed hair back, company card placed on the leather. And I sat at the head of the table like I belonged there. I told him quietly about my mother, how she cleaned his floor-to-ceiling windows, how she was fired when she got sick, How she died with hospital bills that stacked up like old leaves. I put a photo on the desk, Rosa in gloves smiling like she believed in the future, and watched the color drain from his face. We spoke like two people playing chess. He offered the old defenses. I had too much to drink. It was a misunderstanding. She's making a scene. And I replied with Fax 7 videos from 7 angles internal emails where his managers discussed upgrading demographics depositions from employees who said the same thing in different years. The law looked at that weight of evidence and started to move. Former employees came forward, civil suits multiplied, regulatory investigations opened. The merger dissolved. Banks pulled lines of credit. His company slipped into receivership. His buildings went to auction. I bought back one of his properties at a discount, the very building where my mother had worked, and we started to change its name and purpose. There's a part of the story that feels sweet. A man who poured soup on a woman packing a box as security walked him out. But revenge is a shallow lake. The deeper thing we did was something harder. We turned humiliation into a platform for rebuilding. We opened a community center in that building. Classrooms, legal clinics, a small business incubator, affordable units for families who had been priced out of their neighborhoods. We named it after Rosa Ellis. That mattered more than the headlines. A few moments in the margin. People ask if I wanted revenge. No, I wanted accountability. I wanted consequences that fit the actions and systems that made those actions costly. I wanted corporate boards to stop burying complaints in NDAs, to stop defending executives because of the letterhead on their stationery. Did the system change overnight? Of course not, but patterns shifted. Boards asked different questions. Activists found leverage. A few execs got the message you can't behave like that and expect business as usual. Now, the heavy part, this didn't erase the smell of bleach in my childhood memories. It didn't make my mother come back. What it did do was make sure the next person who thinks they can humiliate someone in public has to consider a different calculus. Cameras, witnesses, consequences. Power can be punished, but the work after punishment, the building, the healing, the policy change, that's where real progress lives. So here's what I want from you. Imagine you were at that gala. What would you have done? Would you have stepped forward and grabbed his sleeve? Would you have pulled out your phone and filmed? Would you have turned away and blamed me for making drama? Be honest, because the next time you see someone humiliated, your reaction matters. Recording helps. Yes, but so does action, calling security physically. Stepping in if it's safe, creating a human chain, staying with the victim afterward. Final. A call to action. If this story moved, you don't let it be just entertainment. Share it with someone who thinks accountability is optional. Comment below. Did I do the right thing, or did I blur a line between justice and revenge? Tell your story. Have you ever been humiliated in public and watched people film instead of helping? What would you want someone to do for you if you believe systems need change? Say what should change. If you think viral shaming is dangerous, explain why. Subscribe for more stories about people who don't just get a seat at someone else's table, they build their own. Drop a comment with one action you'll take next time you witness injustice. Call Confront Record or help. Remember, being a witness is not neutral. It's a choice. What will you choose?